should drink this herbal tea, honey. It will help with your stress, my husband Marcus said, sliding a steaming cup toward me across our kitchen table. His smile was warm, carrying the same smile that had made me fall in love with him 6 years ago. But now, after 2 years of watching him supposedly die from cancer, I had learned to notice the things that smile tried to hide: the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth, the way his eyes darted to the cup and back to my face. Almost eagerly, I lifted the tea to my lips, pretending to take a sip while watching him over the rim. His shoulders relaxed when he thought I drank it. That's when I knew for certain my husband wasn't just lying to me. He was trying to keep me sedated, controllable, blind to whatever truth he was hiding. My name is Victoria, and at 32 years old I was about to discover that the man I had sacrificed everything for, the man I had sold my mother's house for, borrowed money from friends for, worked myself to exhaustion for, had never been sick a single day in his life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how I went from a devoted wife counting down the days until her husband's death to a woman who would watch him be dragged away in handcuffs with nothing but satisfaction in her heart. It all started on an ordinary Wednesday evening 2 years ago. Marcus came home from work 3 hours late, his face pale, his hands trembling so badly he could barely hold his briefcase. I remember rushing to him thinking he'd been in an accident or received terrible news about a family member. I had no idea how right I was about the terrible news, but how wrong I was about everything else. Victoria, he said, his voice cracking as he pulled me onto the couch beside him. I went to the doctor today for that cough that wouldn't go away. Remember? I nodded. I had been nagging him about it for weeks, a persistent dry cough that kept us both awake at night. They found something, he continued, and I watched tears spill down his cheeks. The biopsy results came back. It's lung cancer, stage 3. It spread to my lymph nodes. The world stopped spinning. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except collapse into his arms sobbing. Marcus was 34 years old. He had never smoked, never worked around hazardous materials. He went to the gym 3 times a week and ate healthier than anyone I knew. How could he have lung cancer? How could God be so cruel to take this beautiful man from me? We had just started trying for a baby, had just put a down payment on a bigger house, had just begun planning the rest of our lives together, and now a doctor I had never met was telling us he might have 2 years left if the treatment worked. I threw myself into saving him with everything I had. Within a week, I had researched every treatment option, every clinical trial, every alternative therapy known to medicine. Marcus said his oncologist, Dr. Harrison Reynolds at Houston Methodist, had recommended an aggressive combination of chemotherapy, radiation, and a new experimental immunotherapy drug. The standard treatments would be covered by insurance, but the experimental drug cost $15,000 per month and wasn't approved yet. We would have to pay out of pocket. I didn't hesitate. I would have sold my soul to save Marcus, let alone my savings. The first $50,000 went fast. Our entire savings account emptied in just 3 months. I picked up extra shifts at the marketing firm, working 60, sometimes 70 hours a week, while Marcus lay on the couch growing weaker by the day, or so I thought. He lost weight rapidly, his clothes hanging off his frame like a scarecrow. He shaved his head before the hair could fall out, he said, claiming it gave him a sense of control. I would come home exhausted at midnight to find him asleep, his skin pale and papery, dark circles under his eyes like bruises, and I would cry silently in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear me mourning him while he was still alive. When the savings ran out, I sold my grandmother's jewelry, a collection of antique pieces. She had spent 50 years accumulating diamonds, emeralds, a ruby necklace that had been in our family for 4 generations. I got $47,000 for pieces worth twice that, but I was desperate. Marcus said Dr. Reynolds wanted to increase the frequency of his treatments. The cancer was responding, but slowly. We needed to be more aggressive. I handed over the money without question. My grandmother would have understood. She had loved Marcus like a grandson. 6 months later we were broke again, and the medical bills kept coming. That's when Marcus first mentioned my mother's house. She had left it to me when she passed 4 years earlier, a modest 3-bedroom in the suburbs that I had been renting out. The rental income was supposed to be our safety net, our future, our children's college fund. But Marcus was my future. And what good was a college fund if he wasn't alive to see our children grow up? I sold the house for $195,000, barely stopping to cry when I signed away the last piece of my mother I would ever hold. But even that wasn't enough. The experimental treatment required a minimum 6-month commitment, Drive Reynolds said, and there were additional costs for monitoring specialized nutrition supplements to manage side effects. I borrowed $30,000 from my best friend Sarah, who emptied her own savings to help the woman who had been my maid of honor, who had held my hand through my mother's funeral. Didn't hesitate for a second. Another $20,000 came from my brother Daniel, who took out a second mortgage on his condo. I promised them both I would pay them back as soon as Marcus recovered, as soon as we could return to normal life. I had no idea that normal had been a lie from the very beginning. In total over 2 years I spent $342,000 on my husband's cancer treatment, $342,000 that bought chemotherapy sessions that never happened, radiation appointments at facilities that didn't exist, and experimental drugs that were nothing more than sugar pills if they existed at all, and through it all Marcus played his role perfectly, the loving dying husband grateful for every sacrifice I made, counting down his final days with dignity and grace. He deserved an Oscar for that performance, he really did. The cracks started appearing 6 months ago, small things at first that I tried to ignore. Marcus always insisted on going to his appointments alone, claiming he didn't want me to see him at his weakest, hooked up to machines pumped full of poison, but when I offered to at least drive him, he refused, saying the Uber rides gave him time to mentally prepare. I thought it was strange, but I respected his wishes. Then there was the matter of Dr. Reynolds. I asked repeatedly to speak with his oncologist to understand the treatment plan, to know what to expect as the disease progressed, but Marcus always had an excuse. Dr. Reynolds was in surgery. Dr. Reynolds was at a conference. Dr. Reynolds preferred to communicate only with the patient. I started to wonder if Dr. Reynolds even existed. Then there were the inconsistencies in his symptoms. Some days Marcus could barely lift his head from the pillow, too weak to eat or speak. Other days I would come home unexpectedly and find him moving around the house with surprising energy, only to suddenly become feeble again when he noticed me watching. His weight loss seemed almost too controlled, dropping steadily, but never dramatically, as if he was following a careful diet rather than wasting away from disease. And his hair, which he claimed was falling out in clumps, I never found a single strand in the shower drain, not one, but I pushed these doubts aside, telling myself I was being paranoid, that the stress was making me see problems where none existed. My husband was dying, and I was questioning his symptoms. What kind of monster was I? The answer came on a Thursday afternoon in March. I had left work early with a migraine so severe I could barely see straight. All I wanted was to take some medication and lie down in a dark room, but when I pulled into our driveway, Marcus's car was gone. Strange, since he had texted me that morning saying he felt too weak to leave the house. I let myself in quietly, my head pounding with every step. The living room was empty. The blanket Marcus usually wrapped himself in folded neatly on the couch as if it hadn't been used at all. His laptop sat open on the kitchen counter, and that's when I saw it, a notification on the screen that would change everything. New message from Vanessa: can't wait for tonight, baby. My migraine forgotten, I sank into the kitchen chair and clicked on the notification. Marcus's email opened, revealing a conversation that made my blood turn to ice. The most recent message was from someone named Vanessa Torres, sent just 2 hours earlier. Hey handsome, she had written, the contractors finished the back massage rooms yesterday, and they look amazing. We should be ready for the grand opening next month. Can you believe it? Our dream is finally coming true. Your wife still doesn't suspect anything, right? Don't forget to pick up my prenatal vitamins on your way over. The baby has been kicking like crazy today. I think she knows her daddy's coming to visit. Love you forever, V. I read the message 3 times, certain I was hallucinating, that my migraine had somehow caused me to see things that weren't there, but the words didn't change. Our dream, prenatal vitamins, the baby, her daddy. This woman wasn't just having an affair with my husband, she was pregnant with his child, and they were building some kind of business together. With shaking hands I scrolled back through their conversation history, and what I found made me physically sick. Their relationship had started 4 years ago, a full year before Marcus's cancer diagnosis. They had met at a business conference in Dallas, and the emails from that first year were typical affair material: secret meetings, coded messages, promises of a future together. But then 2 years ago the tone changed dramatically. I found a message from Marcus dated exactly 1 week before he told me about his diagnosis. I've figured it out, he wrote. My cousin works at a medical supply company and he can get us authentic-looking documents, hospital letterheads, prescription pads, the works. Victoria makes good money, and she's got that house from her mother plus her grandmother's jewelry. If I play this right, we could be looking at $300K, maybe more, enough to open the spa and start our real life together. I just need to be convincing. Vanessa's response was equally damning. Are you sure you can pull it off? She asked, pretending to be sick for that long won't be easy. Marcus's reply made me want to scream. I've already started practicing losing weight, shaving my head, learning to look exhausted. Victoria loves me so much she won't question anything. She'll drain her account, sell everything she owns just to save me, and by the time she figures out the truth, if she ever does, we'll be long gone, with our baby and our business, living the life we deserve. I sat in that kitchen for 2 hours reading through 4 years of emails, watching my entire marriage revealed as a calculated scam. Every I love you Marcus had ever said to me, every tear he had shed about his diagnosis, every moment of weakness that had made me work harder, sacrifice more, love him deeper, all of it was performance. I learned that the weight loss came from a strict diet and occasional fasting, that the pallor came from makeup and avoiding the sun, that the fatigue was just acting Marcus had Never set foot in an oncologist's office, had never received a single chemotherapy treatment, had never been anything other than a perfectly healthy man pretending to die so he could steal everything I had. My first instinct was to confront him immediately, to be waiting at the door when he came home from his visit with Vanessa, to throw his laptop at his head and scream until my throat bled. But something stopped me, a cold voice in the back of my mind that sounded like my mother. Careful, Victoria. It said, don't let emotion make you stupid. If you confront him now, he'll lie, he'll manipulate, he'll find a way to make you doubt what you've seen, and then he'll disappear with your money and his pregnant girlfriend, and you'll have nothing, no husband, no money, no justice, nothing except the humiliation of having been the most gullible woman in America. So I took a breath and I made a different choice. I screenshotted every email, every message, every document I could find and sent them to a new email address I created on my phone. Then I cleared the browser history, closed the laptop exactly as I had found it, and went upstairs to wait for my husband to come home. I had a migraine to fake after all, and apparently I had married the best acting teacher in Texas. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life. Every day I had to look at Marcus's face and pretend I still loved him, still believed him, still feared losing him to a disease that didn't exist. I brought him his medications, which I now realized were probably just vitamins. I cooked his special cancer diet meals. I held his hand when he cried about being scared to die, and inside I felt nothing but ice, where my heart used to be a frozen core of rage and calculation that grew colder with every lie he told. But I wasn't idle during those months. I was building my case piece by piece, lie by lie. I hired a private investigator named Rosa Martinez, a former FBI agent, who specialized in fraud cases. She confirmed within 2 weeks what I already knew. Marcus Chen had never been treated for cancer at any hospital in Texas or anywhere else in the country. The oncologist Dr. Harrison Reynolds didn't exist. The treatment center in Houston that had supposedly received nearly $200,000 of my money was a shell company registered to a P.O. box. The money had been funneled through a series of accounts before landing in the business account of Serenity Wellness Spa LLC, owned by one Vanessa Torres. Rosa also discovered additional crimes I hadn't known about. Marcus had opened 3 credit cards in my name using forged signatures, and had racked up $43,000 in debt buying jewelry, designer clothes, and luxury vacations, all for Vanessa. He had taken out a home equity loan on our house, also forged, putting us $60,000 in debt with our home as collateral, and he had been telling Vanessa that I was mentally unstable, possibly dangerous, claiming he needed to keep me sedated and compliant until they could safely disappear together. The herbal tea. I suddenly realized the tea he kept pushing on me every evening. I had one of the tea bags tested at a laboratory. It contained trace amounts of a mild sedative, nothing dangerous, but enough to keep me drowsy and foggy, unable to think clearly or question his lies. I also investigated Vanessa, and what I found made me hate her almost as much as Marcus. She wasn't some innocent woman seduced by a charming liar. She was a full partner in the scheme with a history of similar cons. She had been engaged twice before, and both engagements had ended when her fiancés discovered she had emptied their bank account. She had arrest records for fraud in Florida and California, though the charges had been dropped both times. She was beautiful, I'll give her that, with long dark hair and the kind of face that made people want to trust her, but behind those pretty eyes was a predator, every bit as ruthless as my husband. The spa they were building was legitimate, at least in the sense that it actually existed. I drove by it one afternoon, a sleek modern building in a trendy Austin neighborhood with floor-to-ceiling windows and a tasteful sign reading Serenity Wellness opening soon. Through the windows I could see marble counters, designer furniture, massage tables that probably cost more than my monthly salary, all of it paid for with money I had earned with assets my mother and grandmother had left me with loans from friends and family who had trusted me. This place was built on my bones, and Marcus and Vanessa were planning to live like royalty while I was left with nothing but debt and humiliation. I took my evidence to a lawyer named Diana Okonkwo, a fierce woman in her 50s who had made her reputation destroying white-collar criminals in court. She reviewed everything, and when she looked up at me her eyes were gleaming. "This isn't just divorce material," she said. "This is criminal fraud, identity theft, forgery. And depending on what was in that tea, possibly attempted poisoning. Your husband is going to prison, Victoria, and I'm going to personally make sure he stays there for a very long time." We filed criminal charges, first working with the district attorney's office to build an airtight case. Then Diana helped me prepare the civil lawsuit that would claw back every penny Marcus had stolen. I also quietly contacted his family, his parents, who had always treated me like a daughter, his sister, who had been one of my bridesmaids. I told them everything, showed them the evidence, and watched their faces transform from disbelief to horror to fury. Marcus's father, a retired police officer, was so angry I thought he might track down his son and handle things himself, but I convinced him to let the law do its work. The revenge would be sweeter if Marcus saw his entire family turn against him, if he understood that his lies hadn't just destroyed our marriage but every relationship he had ever had. The grand opening of Serenity Wellness Spa was scheduled for Saturday, June 15th. I knew because Vanessa had been promoting it heavily on social media, counting down the days, posting photos of the beautiful space, sharing her excitement about her new chapter, and her growing baby bump. 300 people had RSVP'd to the opening party, including local influencers, a reporter from Austin Monthly, and several potential investors. It was going to be the biggest day of Vanessa's life, the culmination of everything she and Marcus had worked toward. The moment their dream finally came true, I decided it would also be the day their dream died. I planned everything with Diana's help, coordinating with the police to execute the arrest warrant at maximum impact. I also arranged a few surprises of my own because I wanted Marcus to understand exactly what he had lost, and exactly who he had underestimated. For 2 years he had treated me like a fool, a cash machine with a heartbeat too stupid and love-struck to see through his performance. Now I was going to show him what happened when the fool stopped playing along. The morning of June 15th I woke up calm for the first time in months. I knew exactly how the day would unfold, and there was a certain peace in that certainty. Marcus was already gone, supposedly at another early morning treatment session, but actually helping Vanessa prepare for the opening. I got dressed carefully, choosing a red dress my mother had given me for my 30th birthday, the color of confidence, she had said, the color of a woman who knows her worth. I put on my grandmother's earrings, the only pieces of her jewelry I had kept back from the sale, and I looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment. You survived, I told my reflection. Now make them regret ever crossing you. I arrived at Serenity Wellness Spa at exactly 7 p.m. The party was already in full swing, with well-dressed guests sipping champagne and admiring the beautiful space. Vanessa stood in the center of it, all glowing in a white maternity dress, her hand resting on her belly as she accepted congratulations from her admirers. Marcus was beside her, looking healthier than I had seen him in 2 years, his cheeks full, his color good, his eyes bright with excitement and triumph. They made a beautiful couple, I had to admit, picture perfect, like something from a magazine. They had no idea I was there, not at first. I stayed near the entrance watching them work the room, shaking hands, accepting praise, basking in the success they had built on my suffering. I waited until Vanessa clinked a glass to get everyone's attention, waited until she began her speech about following her dreams and building something meaningful and never giving up on what you believe in. I waited until Marcus put his arm around her and kissed her cheek and smiled, that same smile he had used on me for 6 years, the smile that had convinced me he was dying, that he loved me, that I was his whole world. Then I walked forward through the crowd and I made sure my voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. That's a beautiful speech, Vanessa, I said, but you left out the best part, the part where you and your boyfriend stole $342,000 from his wife to build this place. The room went silent, every head turned toward me. Marcus's face drained of color so dramatically that for a moment he actually looked like the cancer patient he had pretended to be. Vanessa's hand flew to her belly instinctively, as if she could protect her unborn child from what was coming. I kept walking forward, my heels clicking on the marble floor that my money had paid for, until I was standing directly in front of them. Hello, Marcus, I said, my voice steady as a blade. I got your text this morning about how weak you were feeling. Funny thing though, you look pretty healthy to me. Must be a miracle recovery. Marcus tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Victoria. He finally managed, baby, I can explain, but I held up my hand and suddenly the room was filled with people who were definitely not party guests, men and women in suits, some in police uniforms, all of them moving with purpose. Actually, I said, I think Detective Morrison can explain it better than you. Marcus Chen, a tall woman with a badge, announced, stepping forward. You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and forgery. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. The chaos that followed was almost beautiful in its destruction. Marcus tried to run, but 2 officers caught him before he made it 3 steps. Vanessa started screaming that there must be some mistake, that Marcus had told her the money was his, that she was the victim here. The guests scattered, some pulling out phones to record the spectacle, others rushing for the exits. The reporter from Austin Monthly stayed her camera capturing every moment of the downfall. She had come for a puff piece about a new spa. She was leaving with the story of the year. I stood in the middle of it all, perfectly still as the storm raged around me, watching Marcus being handcuffed, watching Vanessa being escorted to a separate police car for questioning, watching the beautiful spa being roped off with yellow crime scene tape. The forensic accountants would be arriving soon. Diana had told me to inventory everything, to document exactly how my stolen money had been spent, and when they were done, when every massage table and marble counter had been catalogued and valued, it would all be seized, liquidated, and returned to me with interest. Before they put Marcus in the police car, I walked over to say goodbye. He looked up at me from the back seat, his face a mask of desperation and disbelief. Victoria, please, he begged, you don't understand. I loved you, I really did. I made mistakes. Please, you have to forgive me. I leaned down close enough that only he could hear me, my voice soft, almost gentle. You're right, Marcus, I said, you did make a mistake. You married a woman who pays attention And now you're going to prison while I take back everything you stole, including the spa, including Vanessa's assets, including every penny she has to her name. Your girlfriend is about to discover what it feels like to lose everything, and your baby, if it's even yours, will be born while you're sitting in a cell. I hope she was worth it." I straightened up and turned away, ignoring his shouted pleas as the car door closed behind me. Across the parking lot, Vanessa was having what appeared to be a complete breakdown, screaming at the officers that Marcus had promised her that he said his wife would never find out, that this wasn't fair. When she saw me watching, she lunged forward, restrained by 2 officers, her beautiful face contorted with rage. She screamed, "This is your fault, you ruined everything." I smiled at her, the same warm, caring smile Marcus had used on me for 6 years. "Actually," I called back, "I think you'll find you ruined everything. I just made sure there were consequences." The trial took 4 months. Marcus was charged with 27 counts of fraud, 12 counts of identity theft, 8 counts of forgery, and 3 counts of administering a noxious substance. The tea had been a nice touch by the prosecution, showing not just financial manipulation but physical control over his victim. He tried to blame everything on Vanessa, claiming she had masterminded the scheme and manipulated him into participating, but the emails told a different story. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and found him guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 10. Vanessa's trial was shorter. She pleaded guilty to 14 counts of fraud in exchange for a reduced sentence, but the judge wasn't feeling generous. She got 8 years and was ordered to forfeit all her assets, including the spa, including the luxury apartment she had rented with my money, including the designer wardrobe and the expensive car and the jewelry Marcus had bought her with credit cards in my name. She gave birth in prison 3 months later to a baby girl I heard through the grapevine that she named her Hope. I wonder if she appreciates the irony. The civil lawsuit was even more satisfying than the criminal trial. Diana went after anyone who had knowingly participated in or benefited from the fraud. Marcus's cousin, who had provided the fake medical documents, was forced to pay restitution and lost his job at the medical supply company. The accountant who had helped set up the shell companies lost his license and faced his own criminal charges. In the end, between the seizure of assets, the court ordered restitution, and the additional damages Diana argued for, I recovered $487,000, more than I had lost. I used some of that money to pay back Sarah and Daniel with interest. I donated the fake cancer medication to a research facility studying medical fraud. I sold the spa building to a legitimate business owner who had no idea of its history, and I bought back my mother's house, which had thankfully not yet been resold by the family who purchased it. I'm sitting in that house now, writing this story, in the same room where I used to do my homework as a little girl, where my mother taught me to be strong and careful and never let anyone make me feel small. Marcus sent me a letter from prison last month, 47 pages of apologies, explanations, and pleas for forgiveness. He says he's found God, that he understands now how much he hurt me, that he'll spend the rest of his life making it up to me if I just give him another chance. I read the whole thing carefully, then I fed it through the shredder and took out the trash. Some garbage doesn't deserve a response. People ask me sometimes how I managed to stay so calm through all of it, how I could sleep next to a man I knew was betraying me, how I could smile at him every day while planning his destruction. The answer is simple. I loved the woman I was before Marcus more than I ever loved him, and I wasn't going to let him take her from me along with everything else he stole, so I protected her. I wrapped her in ice and calculation and patience, and when the time was right, I let her out to do what needed to be done. I'm 33 now, a year older than when this nightmare began, and in some ways I'm grateful for what happened, not for the betrayal or the theft or the months of pretending, but for what it taught me about myself. I am stronger than I knew, more patient than I imagined, capable of a cold, clear focus I never suspected I possessed. Marcus thought he married a fool, an easy target, a woman too blinded by love to see the obvious truth, but he was wrong. He married a survivor, and survivors don't just endure, we overcome, we adapt, and when necessary we destroy the things that try to destroy us. The spa building is a yoga studio now. I drive past it sometimes on my way to work, and I always smile. The marble counters are gone, replaced by bamboo floors and meditation cushions. The massage rooms have been converted into peaceful spaces for breathing exercises and gentle stretching. There's no trace left of Serenity Wellness, no evidence that it was ever anything other than what it is now, a place of genuine healing instead of manufactured lies. I like to think my mother would approve. She always said the best revenge wasn't about hurting the people who hurt you, it was about building something beautiful from the wreckage they left behind. Marcus will be eligible for parole in 8 years. I've already filed paperwork to be notified when his hearing comes up, and I've written a statement for the parole board describing in detail the impact his crimes had on my life, my finances, my ability to trust other people. I don't know if they'll keep him locked up, but I know this: even if he gets out, even if he somehow rebuilds his life and finds someone else to deceive, he will never forget me. He will never forget the moment his perfect plan crumbled around him the moment his stolen empire was seized, the moment his own family turned their backs and refused to answer his calls from prison. I am the consequence he never expected, the ending he didn't see coming, and that knowledge will follow him for the rest of his life.